What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd J Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me as always is Mr. Brian Schultz. Fantastic Four. We got some updates, some news on their cast, some news on the cast and their characters and what they're sort of like, especially for Johnny Storm, one particular statement he made. But it'll be interesting to see this Johnny Storm that we get in this one because it's going to be different, I think, in terms of how he's depicted. We're also going to get into the Downey costume. Hopefully this is not true, but it seems like more likely. And we get our segment, Beau Knows, and then we'll get into some tidbits. Fantastic Four, Brian. What are the new updates?
So some talk from the cast and Matt Shakman about the film and about the characters, and specifically a few updates or modernizations or, depending on your viewpoint, disnifications of characters. So Johnny Storm, we know in the comics he's typically pretty brash. He's typically pretty arrogant, really likes women a lot. And Joseph Quinn, who's playing this iteration, says we're not going to get some of that. Quote, he's a man that leads with a lot of bravado, which can be an affront sometimes, but he's also funny. This version of Johnny is less callous with other people's feelings, and hopefully there's a self-awareness about what's driving that attention-seeking behavior, to which Matt Shakman then adds, it's often forgotten that Johnny is, quote, really smart and on that spaceship for a reason. He's been one of the most heroic of them, even if he's undercutting his heroism at every turn through humor, end quote. Your reaction to a gentler Johnny Storm?
I don't think he's going to be that much of a gentler Johnny Storm. I think we'll still get the cocky, somewhat playful Johnny. And I'm hoping for a characterization of Johnny that does not stray too far from who his character is. I'm pretty sure there might be instances where he does come across another female that he's interested in, but it's not the focal point of the movie. So I'm not too concerned about that.
The concern is, does he become too goofy? This version of the Fantastic Four establishes that they are celebrities, right? They are worldwide famous. So in that context, one would expect Johnny to be, have three girls on his arm, or you would expect that at this point. So to take that out, if that's what they've done, might be robbing a little bit of the essence of the character. And so then you wind up, if he's still going to be comic relief in some ways, is he too comic relief? Is he too light? The womanizing part would be part of the flaw, right? These are flawed heroes. I mean, they're heroes, but they're flawed heroes. And he needs that flaw, you could argue, to be part of his DNA. So it's one of those where I'm like, does it totally put you off the portrayal? No. But to my point about disnification, when you read that, the first thing to me that comes to mind is that's the Mouse House saying we can't have that in the first family, which would be unfortunate. So then there's Sue. So Vanessa Kirby said she was well aware of all the different incarnations of Sue through the comics, pregnant mother, wife, all that sort of stuff. So she kind of mentions what I think is a little more of an interesting turn here, where she does talk about her more as sort of like the center of the family. But she says there were tones of malice, meaning the movie Malice, I think it's the Alec Baldwin, Nicole Kidman, like kind of thriller movie Malice, in there with her. So she's not just a goody sweet mother, end quote. Now that's more encouraging, I think, to make Sue's got to have a little darkness. The trailer definitely makes her seem like the rock of the family. No offense intended to Ben Grimm, but I think she's implying that Sue has a little bit of a nasty streak too, somewhere in here. Then there's Galactus. This one I'm curious about. So Matt Shakman talked about the challenge of making Galactus. And he said, I didn't just want to use motion capture Galactus. I wanted to actually have someone there embodying the part. So we built the entire costume for him, I think meaning Ralph Innocent. And we've done a lot of photography testing to figure out how do you make the scale correct, as in how do you film Mount Rushmore?
All of this just makes me have it raises the level of excitement of what we're going to see with this movie. and the characterizations. Not sure still with what the storyline is and having Galactus come to Earth. You know, I would have liked to seen Galactus come to Earth because he's hungry, right? And this dude convinced him not to. And having a confrontation with Galactus and how that plays out.
I think,
but they're going a different route.
Yeah, so I'm encouraged by this because I do think the physics of Galactus really matter, right? We see this, with like the Godzilla movies, for example. When they're done well, Godzilla or King Kong always look heavy. They look and feel gigantic. Their emotions feel realistically paced. When it gets silly, all of a sudden they're running, right? Like in the last movie, they're running side by side like Usain Bolt and, Tyson Gay, right? It just, you can't have that. It has to be believable. And my worry with something like Galactus is if you bring this giant CGI only character on screen, are there moments where you're like, there's no way a dude that size would be doing that. And so the fact that Shackman's trying to do something that straddles a practical effect with a motion capture and a CGI, I think it's a noble experiment, right? I think whether how successful he is, we'll see. But I think it's critical to make us believe that there's this giant planet-sized dude like walking around and doing things and moving in a believable way. So I'm encouraged, and I think, look, we're in the era of this where we're going to compare. I referenced the Godzilla MonsterVerse, like that's out there. Voltron is coming, right? That's another one where the physics of Voltron and the Road Beasts are going to be very important to how we receive that movie, right? They're doing a live action Gundam movie, same idea. Like, we've seen Pacific Rim. Like, we're in an era where movies are trying to do these giant scale characters and creatures, and how well you do those, how realistic you make them, goes a long way to how we accept them.
Oh yeah. This is going to be very interesting to see, man. I only wish we've seen the original reason for Galactus being on Earth, but I guess I understand them not wanting to do that again. Whatever, right? We're getting them. Again, I'm going to say this again. Fantastic Four, I think, is going to be the thing that gets people excited for what more they have coming up next. I don't know if it does the same Fantastic Four is going to be in Doomsday, so their participation in that movie is going to certainly be something that people are going to be looking forward to, depending on what this film does, which I think is going to be some of the best Marvel we've ever gotten in a long, long time.
Really the last act of the summer blockbuster season. If you look at the calendar, July 25th, that's it. As we talked about last week, Naked Gun kind of comes after, so we switch gears into sort of the dead of August with a comedy. So Fantastic Four is it. They're at the back of the line and trying to go out strong, but it shows the most promise. It's funny, and I went to see a movie yesterday, and they had that trailer and the Thunderbolts trailer stacked, just coincidentally in a row, and it's just visually, like, you see them side by side and you're like, I'm just interested in the Fantastic. It looks different. It feels different. I'm interested in that one. I see Thunderbolts and I'm like, I kind of seeing Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm seeing Disney Plus, aesthetic. And I'm not saying that movie will be bad. It doesn't grab me the same way.
Yeah. You want to get into Downey?
Well, hang on. Before we leave this story, someone else had an opinion about this.
Okay.
Someone else had a viewpoint of Fantastic Four characters being changed. And
Mr. Beau knows.
Okay, so again, with our disclaimer, we make no comments about the alleged behavior, which you can Google. They started to leak supposedly what he did. So again, unsubstantiated, okay. But if you want to leak at what his inappropriate behavior might have been, you can now find that online, and it's not confirmed, but it's out there. So we make no comment about the validity of that. We only react to his commentary about the IP. When these comments from the Fantastic Four came out, he had a very simple response to that. Okay. Where he just said, first his lead was, quote, they pulled this softening bleep with Namor too, end quote. Then doubled down and said, okay, we'll get to Namor and then to Fantastic Four. Namor came across as a traumatized child throwing a temper tantrum against a black nation, not a king, end quote. Then, regarding Johnny Storm and the Joseph Quinn comments, he criticized Marvel for modernizing the characters, saying that modernizing for them is virtue signaling and pandering. Marvel doesn't do storytelling anymore because no writer wants to work with a company where you are told Kevin is the celebrity and the face of the work, but working for us will help your career after, end quote.
Wow. He's really like...
Well, let me add one more, because someone asked him specifically about, okay, what would you do with Johnny then, if that's your viewpoint? So he says, quote, "There's a way, if you wanted, to tell a really compelling story about a braggart white boy who lacks empathy and is a little womanizing, who is checked and humbled after being transformed into a celebrity hero, where he himself is treated like a product and thereby reflects on his own duty to be better," end quote. He's not wrong creatively when he says that. He's not wrong.
No, that sounds good. That sounds interesting. That sounds interesting to me right there. Again, it doesn't take away from what I'm looking to see in this new Johnny Storm, but that story right there.
This is the conundrum of Beau DeMayo, right? It's like he is at once... He can turn you off on the one sense and maybe behaved inappropriately if you believe depending on the allegations you believe. But there is a creative genius here when he talks of, like, he does, at the very least, he's read his comics, understands his characters, and has a viewpoint for how to translate them into screen. And in this particular case, I tend to agree with him. I think the braver, bolder choice would have been to go more in the direction he's suggesting than to simply dull the characters' flaws, which appears to be what they're trying to do.
Interesting.
What do you think of the Namor? What do you think of the Namor drive-by?
I mean, it's funny, yo. It's funny. That's all I can say.
I like the performance. I guess I didn't really. Now, granted, he is also mirroring that to Namor in the comics. Like, when I read when he's lensing it, he's not looking at it as just the performance on its own. He's looking at it relative to his knowledge of the comics character and how he would translate it. So when you see the critiques, you have to realize that. But that was pretty wild, that tape.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I want to see, when we get to Avengers Doomsday, I want to see his reaction to Sue Storm. Because there's that thing between them where she knows where her loyalties lie, but she can't help but have this thing or connection with Namor if they subtly hint at those things. But at this point, based on where we're going, it has nothing to do with any of those things, and it has to do with more about RDJ and Doom.
Now, amidst all of this triangle, I do need to flag something that has been getting some rightful questions and buzz since the Doomsday chair lineup was announced. So we've got Beau DeMayo, who was fired from X-Men 97 for alleged inappropriate behavior, right? You have Jonathan Majors, who was fired as Kang for inappropriate behavior, allegation of misconduct. We obviously know he actually was convicted of certain charges and served some time. Tenoch Huerta has been accused of sexual assault within the last 6 months. But didn't that come to light in like the end of last year?
I would say probably like a year ago.
I guess it was the person he supposedly abused went more public about it at the end of last year. That's what I'm thinking of.
When was that? When was that?
That was in December of 2020. Or sorry, no, that's December of 23. You're right, not 6 months ago. December of 23, not 24. And there's legal action pending on that.
It's still pending?
Yes.
So
it is interesting that Disney kind of just completely ignores that. I'm just saying, you got these two guys, right? These two guys of a one persuasion who kind of have been fired for somewhat similar things, and then a guy who's accused of something similar where it's not been resolved is being promoted into the Avengers movie.
You can point out the discrepancies and and start pointing out these things is just an interesting thing to note. And then them knowing this, going through with this, let's say he is found guilty of what he's being accused of. You can't say you didn't know.
Right.
You knew a year ago that this was happening in the background. Are you consulting with his people in terms of where this is at? And you know what I'm saying? And trying to, the fact that it is still pending, you knew about this. And I don't know, maybe he did, whatever. But if he's found guilty, you don't look real good because you knew about it.
The DeMayo one is more defensible just because that occurred within the confines of Disney, right? His alleged behavior was on the set of a Disney show. So they would have more cause to look at that as, if it did happen, hey, that violates a code of conduct within our workplace. And therefore they could fire him. He could sue them as he has, and then I could work out. The Majors one is the more parallel one, right? Because Majors' transgressions did not occur on the set of his Marvel projects. These were things that occurred in his personal life away from set, which is exactly what Huerta's being accused of. That's the one that's more, yes, was Majors ultimately found guilty of some of the allegations, and was he given penalties? Yes, he was. But he was fired before that conviction was handed down. That's what draws your attention to how this is being handled.
Interesting things.
So I only bring it up too because I think Beau DeMayo is taking a run at the Namor portrayal, but I wonder if underneath there's a subplot of I'm taking a run at the character who's under some similar scrutiny, but still is in the seat, whereas I'm not John the Major. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just wonder if there's a little subtext there.
And it's a top 5 question if I had him on the show. How do you feel about this, Jonathan? This is still happening. He's in a movie that you should have been in. Knowing this similarity, yet the result is different. Why? Those are questions that I just would like to know the answers to. As to why. Why is this a different thing? I'm not saying, I would say this. Why was I treated differently? That's the question. Like, why was I treated differently? Like, what's it, Yeah. And not to say that Tina Qualta needs to be thrown off the set, but why was I fired? That's the question that Disney whatever, but I would want an answer to from them. An explanation, because sometimes things don't make sense and you just want to understand certain things because it helps you. I don't know. It's just one of those things that you just want answers to when the answers are there. This was discussed. Obviously you weren't in the room, but you made these decisions, and yet it's happening again with someone else, but the result is different. Mm-hmm. Why? Downey. And this is not to say that this is how he will probably look, but there are some images out because they're shooting.
Yeah.
So now there's a leaked photo of Downey in a specific haircut that looks similar to Taika Waititi. And if this is Doom, I don't know, Brian. This is just any news that comes out of this thing just gets, to me, heightens my level of concerns for this movie and for the character Doom. Your thoughts?
This stems from a leaked image from Downey's birthday invitation. His birthday invitation to his friends has a comics portrayal of Dr. Doom wearing a sort of dark green military uniform with a heavy purple cape, and a curly-haired Victor Von Doom is visible but covered by an Iron Man style mask. The curly hair is conspicuous because Downey himself has shown up with curly hair similar to this in real life as he gets set to shoot this movie. Look, so we don't know. Is this the look that they're going to use? Is this just Downey having fun with some comic book art? I would be very disappointed if this is what he's going to look like in this movie. If this is going to be a guy in a combat suit with a purple cape wearing an Iron Man mask, you're doing a lot of effort to basically tell us this is not the real Victor Von Doom. This is just Robert Downey riffing on an evil Tony Stark. I think it'll take us out of this character a little bit if this is what he looks like.
I'm looking at the picture right now. And at the bottom of it, you have two sort of traditional looking Dooms.
Yeah.
And my opinion stems from the behavior or the things that we've seen with RDJ and his involvement in this movie. His reveal, all about him. Him writing Doom. Him being the only one to show up in that casting chair thing and popping up. We knew he was going to be the last chair, but for him to show just him because it's about him, right? This doesn't look good to me. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if he designed this himself, Brian.
On this.
This Doom will not be Marvel Doom. This will be RDJ's Doom.
Yeah.
This is Jack Nicholson all over again.
That's what I said. And that's actually the best case. The best case is that that it is memorable in a good way and it's just not the essence of the character. That's what you're rooting for. But
yeah,
the thing that stuck in my mind that annoys me about this, and again, this goes to the Kevinisms of it all. We need to get Doom right. That is stuck in my head every time I see these updates.
Yeah. It's up there with the Marvels is going to be good and other stuff. This is up there. We got to make Doom great. You are not on the right trajectory with this, yo. Kevin hasn't been on a good run lately. I think he's let himself be guided into paths that perhaps he may not initially want it to do. And the only one he probably put his foot down was with Blade. But he can't say no to these other guys. Right? That's what's funny to me. Like, he said yes to Mahershala Ali in an instant. No, you know what I'm saying? But because everything goes through Kevin, Brian.
Yeah. You can't pass the buck, ultimately. You could say that he does have other people to please, and that's true. He has Iger, he has a shareholder. There's things he has to answer to, so you can't just do things in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. But there's no question that a lot of this has occurred on his watch. You can't just be like, well, it's not his fault. Although you can't just give him the credit when things go well and then not assign any of the blame to him when things go off the tracks. You can't.
Because we did. We gave him all the credit for the interview.
He earned a lion's share of that credit.
Absolutely.
I said he is a first ballot Hall of Fame producer. If he makes 100 more bad movies, he's a first ballot Hall of Fame producer. But that doesn't mean he's above reproach. It doesn't mean if he presides over a disaster like the Secret Invasion, like whatever, like it doesn't mean we can't call him on that. And this is concerning. This is concerning what's happening here with a truly iconic character. And maybe we'll just have to make peace with the fact that the Downey Doom is really not Doom. And Matt Shakman has teased that Doom as villain to his Fantastic Four is somewhere in the future. Maybe that's not Downey's doom. Maybe that's the true Victor Von Doom. We don't know, right? They can do that. But I just will be, I am interested. I'm sure I will be riveted when Downey is on screen, but I may have to separate his performance from Doom as I conceive of Doom to be. If this look is true and Downey just riffs on Downey as Victor Von Doom, I await Beau Nose on that. Because I'm sure he will have thoughts about that deviating from the comics.
Do you find that there's any connection? And I assume so, obviously, because it's her. But Pepper Potts has been Gwyneth Paltrow has been approached to return as Pepper Potts. Your thoughts on that possibility and how it connects to RDJ having, because it starts pointing towards more of that. He's playing Tony Stark to trick people.
I think that's why else would you do it? I mean, you're looking to capitalize on upending the key relationships, right? The key relationships that Tony Stark had in the Infinity Saga. So that's what you're counting on, and you're counting on the audience seeing that and having a reaction to that, because we have a relationship with RDJ's Tony Stark. That's what this is built on. None of that really rests on seeing a true, awesome Victor Von Doom brought to life. It's really just about subverting our emotional experience with the Infinity Saga. So yes, Gwyneth Paltrow is critical to that if you're going to do that. So I'm not surprised.
Oh, man. Scary times. Literally. Tidbits.
You want to go first, or am I going first?
You can go ahead. I don't have any tidbits. Do you have what are the tidbits?
I had one leading one.
Okay.
Which I think was notable for the industry. So as we live in the tariff world, my tidbit is that China is considering banning all Hollywood movies in response to the ongoing tariff escalation between the United States and China. We know that U.S. movies are not the biggest sellers anymore the way they were in the run-up to Endgame. And there's a period in the 10s where China box office for U.S. movies at points was exceeding U.S. box office. Transformers: Age of Extinction is a good example of this. That is a movie that made over $1 billion worldwide. It made more in China than it did in the U.S. Those days are mostly gone because China has basically looked at all of the U.S. movie-making formulas that were popular with their own audience, copied them, and basically makes their own movies. There's that animated movie, Ne Zha 2, which was just still out and is now made over $2 billion worldwide.
That's crazy.
But almost none of that is in the U.S., right? It's almost all China box office.
That's crazy.
But that's them taking the Pixar formula and taking the DreamWorks formula and saying, we can build an animated epic tale that resonates with our audience. So you're not going to get those huge numbers anymore anyway. But if you took them to zero across the board, that still matters, right? These movies still were counting on probably 100 or 200 million, these bigger blockbusters. That raises the difficulty for these blockbusters to make the kind of bank that they need to make, that we need them to make to be successful. It's a big development if they do that.
Well, this is what it will cause. Obviously, something that is happening now because of the extraordinary, remind me of Mr. Han, the extraordinary numbers in terms of budget for movies that are being made now. They just have to go down. They just have to go down. You no longer can you attempt to make 300 if you're losing out on a big market like that. How do you make a $300 million? I mean, listen, I still say even if that happens, He-Man and Voltron are still making bank, and I think the public will demand to see those movies. China, hey, that's money right there. He-Man and Voltron, but superhero movies, those are the ones that are gonna suffer because of their big budgets, because of the interest that is diminishing, and because of these world things that are happening. Yeah, I guess the only person.
Oh,
There's two people.
You remembered it. Good. Say it.
Simu is happy. He don't have to apologize now if that what happened.
Let me tell you something. He has had. Listen, there's a lot of people out there that have had a tough week because everything that's going on in the world. Simu Liu had a good week. He got a chair on the stage, and if China is banning U.S. films, he don't need to make no apology to nobody.
And the other people are going to have a hard time in trying to convince China is the newly appointed ambassadors, Stallone and John Boy. Who else? They're going to have to go over there and shake hands with Z reluctantly to try to get their movies back in that world, because this is not good. This is not good, especially for those studios putting so much money into these things.
Oh, it's Stallone. I'm just it's funny because in the category of tidbits, the director, Ted Kotcheff, was the director of First Blood. He passed away this week at age 92. And you're talking about Stallone going to China, and all I can think about is him in the jungle saying,
"Don't push it. Don't push it. I'll give you a war you won't believe."
We'll put it right after it says he has to go to China, and just boom.
Oh, you caught the Simu Liu thing. I mean, there's no question if that happens, like Avengers Doomsday is kind of off the hook. That's the one blockbuster that at least doesn't, have to worry about, do we need to do anything funny with this? Again, if it sticks, but I don't know. I honestly don't know why it wouldn't. I mean, that's sort of an easy one for them to, they gatekeep the U.S. films anyway, as we know. The censor board is pretty tight, so they could just say no in general. So that's one for the industry. My other one is actually box office related too, which is we got early tracking for the start of summer, and not a great sign for Marvel. So we got 3 movies that they put out early tracks for. Thunderbolt's tracking south of $70 million for the opening weekend. They've got the leadoff slot that first weekend in May. That would be one of the poorest Marvel opens in a long time for a summer Marvel movie. It's just not connecting. And we've heard it's actually decent, and maybe the reviews will start to bring this back up. But these characters are just not hitting with people. And this goes to my whole thing, which I've said all along, is should this have been a TV series? Did this merit being a tentpole movie? And the early box office would kind of say, maybe it did, but if it did barely. It's not, it's coming in pretty darn lukewarm and not providing much help to the Marvel train.
I wish Suicide Squad, the second iteration of it, didn't come out during the pandemic, because I wanted to see the true numbers of what that would have been, because it'll gauge how interested people are in this. But this is just going to gauge how people are how much are people interested in the superhero genre, period. Right? Because obviously it's diminishing like crazy, and you're laying your hopes on Superman and Fantastic Four.
No.
Not Thunderbolts.
No.
Let's see.
That type of number, again, for the budget they've got on this film, that's another loss. I mean, that's another loss for them, even if it is decent. And it just kind of shows, you're talking about the people's interest in the superhero genre. It also, to your point about Suicide Squad, would suggest that, are we oversaturated with the anti-hero hero? Because remember, James Gunn just told us they can't get the authority off the ground, right? And part of that is because they don't believe in its commercial viability, right? They're basically saying we can't justify the budget for this project because we don't think the audience is really there. We saw with Gunn's own Suicide Squad. Look, whatever those numbers would have been, it's not like they would have been massive. In fact, that new Suicide Squad would not have approached what David Ayer's Suicide Squad did, 5 years earlier, even though that's not that good of a movie. I think people just are look, if I want my anti-hero superhero, I got The Boys on Amazon. Why do I need to go to the theater? I got a better version of it already done on TV.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Now that you mentioned The Boys, I can see why Thunderbolts would have made better sense on TV. But again, Brian, they perhaps spending crazy amounts of money on this, and they don't want to put it on Disney Plus because the Disney Plus service is not, I guess, where they would like it to be. And so you pose a risk of spending all this money and not getting a real return on it because people aren't subscribing to this. And the superhero genre is almost out of favor. We got to make some money off of this, and we're going to, that is not looking to go down the way they wanted to.
Well, you continue to see like this decision is so key. Like, you know, Amazon taking over some of the IP like He-Man and Voltron, like, and moving it to big screen, I think will pay dividends for them. But that's a bet. I mean, they're making a bet that those can sell. Likewise, I think there's one movie that's coming out this summer that I actually am curious as to why Netflix didn't put it in theaters, is actually the Happy Gilmore sequel. Sandler always sells, and unlike his newer stuff, that's like one that has real nostalgia. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have Carl Weathers in it, but like the trailer looks pretty good. Like, I'm surprised they didn't actually give that a shot in the theater.
Yeah.
But they're bringing it out in July, just streaming it. So yeah, I don't know. That being said, people are excited for box office because here's two numbers that caught my attention. So the Memorial Day weekend this year, highly competitive. So you have Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and you have the Lilo and Stitch movie, live action, coming out. Same weekend, right? Different audiences in theater, but same weekend. Big numbers. So Lilo and Stitch, the early tracking for that for just the 3 days, so not Memorial Day, just the 3 days, well north of $100 million.
Wow.
MI8, which maybe was more notable. So remember, MI7, the opening weekend was 55, and that was a modest disappointment. Fallout holds the Mission Impossible record at 61. MI8 is tracking just about $100 million for the 3 days.
One last time.
So you got people who do want to go to the movies, right? Two movies that can open well north of at around $100 million each in the same weekend for Memorial Day. But Thunderbolts, people are saying, I'll wait. I'll hold my dollars.
Wanted to say, it's not that people are done with the superhero genre. I think people are done with the MCU. I don't know if that would be a thumbnail for this. People are done with the MCU. Because if Superman does well, and hopefully I think Fantastic Four is going to do well. But
I think Superman will have the bigger opening weekend, though. I think Superman's opening weekend will be well north of 100 as well.
Yeah.
Man of Steel was 128 opening weekend. Obviously did fall off, right? Only did 660 overall. But I think Superman's opening weekend will be well north of 100. I think if it pushes 150, if it pushes 150 domestic and over 300 global opening weekend, your billion might happen. If it's more 125 domestic and 250 global, now it's more 700. That's kind of how I would roughly think about that. But I do think that open will be north of 100. Fantastic Four, not sure. I think it'll be like, I think that one is more like opens 90 to 100 maybe, somewhere around there. But then if it's good, it might get a better run because there's no other blockbuster coming behind it.
But if Fantastic Four doesn't do well in the theaters,
problems.
And it's problems for the MCU, but not for the superhero genre.
Could be. I mean, if they have another year where this time they had 3 movies on the board and all of them disappoint, coming into Doomsday, ice cold like that, it's tough. You know.
Imagine we get Justice League numbers with an Avengers movie.
Well, then I think it's over. Then I think they have to really fundamentally rethink what they're doing.
Yeah.
For the mutant verse. Then you're thinking about like for the X-Men movies, you should be budgeting like now south of $100 million for your starter movies because you only can count on 300, 400. I was going to say if one of these what you need is if one of these movies really, really hits.
We got one.
Yeah, they're going to be jumping for joy if they're finally able to be successful at the box office in terms of what they're expected to. In terms of getting back to the old ways, I don't know if those ways are possible. They are possible with great storytelling, which I think that's the craft that they've lost. They got to the point where they thought they could do anything. They got to, you had people who were part of the Marvel train and they thought they could do TV, you know, and they were able to get some, you know, those like
into the wind and comes to the plate. Oops. Hey, here's a hot shot toward the hole.
You know what I'm saying? You get one of those every once in a while, but you got to be able. What keeps you in the game is your ability to be consistent. You know,
no.
Each and every time out. And obviously in baseball, you guys batting 260, 270 and still being MVPs or whatever the case may be, but they're still able to, when they get the opportunity, to make it count when they need to.
But I see, like when I look at these numbers, I think it's significant because look, we're dealing with a backdrop of a lot of economic uncertainty for people, right? Movies are not, it's not like you can pay 25 cents and go to the cinema, right? So you're going to take your family to the cinema, family of 4, you're going to buy some concessions, you're going to buy tickets. That's an investment. And the reality is when you look at the calendar, there's just not enough dollars people have to go to every one of these movies. So when you see the early tracking, it kind of tells you like, what are people prioritizing? So they're clearly prioritizing MI8. They're clearly prioritizing Lilo and Stitch for the kids. And like, as we get into June, it'll be the same thing. You got Jurassic, you got How to Train Your Dragon, you got F1, and then you've got Superman, then you got Fantastic Four. Most people aren't going to be able to go to even half of those. They might only pick 1 or 2. So the tracking tells you like where the families and where the households are like, I need to make sure I've got my tickets bought and my dollars allocated. And right now, Marvel is on they're not awful, but they're more on the outside of that process than they were, where they used to be the first dollar everyone spent went to the Marvel movie that was coming up.
Multiple times. Yeah, it's not looking too good, especially, man, this Downey thing has me. I look at that picture and it's like, oh, my goodness, man. I sent the text to Tracy and Freddie about what Downey got for his deal to make this movie. He got, a 6-figure payday, a jet, and 24/7 security.
9-figure payday. Not 100.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it's a 9-figure payday and 24/7 security. Yeah. That's the life he's living. Like Ric Flair, they couldn't turn it off.
You just don't turn it off.
They couldn't turn it off. Yeah, man. Let us know in the comment section below what you guys think. Any more tidbits, Brian?
No,
that was it.
My 2 are box office this week. Yep.
All right. Yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of all of the things we discussed with the Fantastic Four and their characters and who they are. What did you guys think of RDJ? I'm gonna make a bet with you. The most favorite character of the Fantastic Four, I think you'll like, is going to be Reed Richards. Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. That's because I'll take that bet. Okay, I'm in Sue Storm camp. So okay.
okay. Yeah. Let us know what you guys think of this possible look for Doom, man. If it's that, I don't know what to tell you. What Beau knows. Let us know what you guys think of what Beau knows, and how important is China to Avengers Doomsday? And their numbers obviously is huge. They can't miss out on that possibility. And I don't know if they're going to have some conversations again. Sylvester Stallone, John Voight, and whoever. I think he named 3 people that were ambassadors. Whomever they are, they got to make a trip out of there and make sure that they can get these movies released over there. But yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think, and we'll see you next time on the Nerd Gen Report.